What is up, everybody? Make sure everything's good. Gonna go live on Friday, going to my normal schedule again. Hope everybody's having a good Friday afternoon or morning, actually, depending on where you're at. It's currently morning where I'm at, but honestly, a lot of things are in the market. Crazy volatility throughout, all kinds of news with tariffs and things. So, kind of going to be touching up on some of my last analysis that I just recently talked about, talking about a lot of the same type of stuff. But overall, I don't think the markets look bad. Altcoins are getting hammered in this dip, with Bitcoin still holding above into new all-time highs. So a lot of people have been asking me what I think about that. Are altcoins smashed? Are they going to continue to go lower? Or, how does this stack up with prior cycles? Because that's the only thing we can really look at. Compare the prior cycles. Look at what we're seeing today. Is it similar? Is this something completely new? If it's completely new, then how can we ultimately adapt to that and continue to make profit long term? When I look at the market, it really isn't that crazy. Like it looks a lot like the last cycle when we're talking about where altcoins were in the last cycle at this same point for, Bitcoin being into a new all-time high. It's all relatively the same. So, we'll look into the charts, talk a lot about exactly, more of the details on what that means. And yeah, we'll talk about Midas too, Tej. We'll see what's going on there. It did make a lower low, but ultimately I'm still just buying more Midas because that's still my favorite position going into 2025. I think that we're going to see a lot of on-chain activity take off, and it's going to be, we're really at the part where it's just institutions dominating everything. That's been the case up to this point. We've seen domination inside of Bitcoin with institutions accumulating mainly Bitcoin. There's constantly being news released. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it or following, but lots of news coming out about ETFs that are getting approved for different sort of cryptos or different filings. I shouldn't say they're approved yet, but there's so many filings that have already been made from all of the top institutions for many of the top altcoins in the market. I was just barely reading about Dogecoin had about 5 or 6 different institutions filing for their ETFs for that. So the institutions are here and they will be in altcoins. And I think that we're just in that transitionary period where, when we're looking at where we're at right now, altcoins are in the toilet. Everybody's freaking out. Bitcoin's in new all-time highs, so people are capitulating out of, altcoins as a whole. But at the end of the day, altcoins were in this exact same point in the last cycle. Bitcoin made its big move into price discovery, and the altcoins were just actually making lower lows and lower highs. Same thing that we're seeing today. So it really isn't that different. And then once that, reversal happened, the Bitcoin money started to rotate back into the altcoins. We saw them just go up basically, 10x type of moves to, in the total market cap. I'm not talking about every crypto because many of them went up, over 100x. But when we're talking about how they moved, it was like 150 to 180 day period where they just instantly started running into new all-time highs. And that's kind of been the case. They're going to move really quick when they move. And it takes about 3 years plus till you get to the point where they're finally actually in that, big breakout. So Solana at this point in the last cycle had just had an 80% correction. There was a number of other cryptos that had just been through, multiple years of bear markets that had maybe made one small higher high. Relatively the same price action we're seeing today. So we'll get into all of that. I'll share with you guys some charts, but I just wanted to make sure that, we got everybody on the same page moving into this. Don't be too freaked out, even though, this is your first cycle. You can't really help but be freaked out. This is your second cycle. A lot of people got in towards the tail end of the last one, so they didn't really know what to expect going into this one. It's all just kind of the process of getting to the point of new all-time highs because the altcoins are always going to lag, and it actually does take a full 3+ years before they ever really start to move in any sort of significant way. I would argue that this cycle has actually been a little bit nice because in the beginning of the cycle, we had layer 2s that started blowing up, and there was some DeFi stuff blowing up. There was a lot of on-chain activity at the beginning of this bull run when we're talking at the very beginning of 2023, right? So we did see a lot of money into different narratives, and there was ways that we could have made money. And then when you're talking about all of the meme coins blowing up and all of the on-chain activity on Solana, it's been kind of segregated to where we've seen specific chains have their own little short-term alt seasons, and you kind of had to just be willing to bridge over there and chase those and rally into them if you were going to be able to capitalize or just, be positioned early ahead of time. So I think that kind of the everything part of the cycle, really isn't that far off. And we've had many alt seasons throughout this cycle up to this point. And I would argue that that's better than even what we kind of saw in some of the prior cycles, because in 2017, even though we had that big alt season, a lot of stuff really didn't move a heck of a lot until that final year where everything just kind of exploded. So, where we're at right now, I would say is very much on path with all of the same things we've seen. Have you ever done a video on CLV, Clover Finance? I have not done a video on Clover Finance. I don't know anything about it. 3 Diglets, shout out to you, my friend. It's good having you in the chat once more. Thank you so much for the donation. I need some bullish TA on AVAX. Thoughts, sir? Yeah, we'll jump into some charts. I've rambled on long enough. Let's get into everything. AVAX. Go here. I mean, there was just an announcement made. I just barely read it on my phone before this live stream started. The European Union was going to basically take back all of their tariffs and stuff. So all of this stuff about the tariffs, it's not really the tariffs themselves. It's just a tactic to be able to basically just get these countries to do what, Trump wants. So I think that all in all, it's not really the tariffs themselves. I don't think that there's going to be anything blowback. I don't think there will be blowback from that. It's really just being something that he's using as a marketing, or not a marketing tactic, but a tactic to get these countries to ultimately do what he wants. And so I think that over the next couple of weeks, we could see volatility around it. But for the most part, all of the news that's came out around him has always just been, they work out some type of a deal and then they go back to, how things were. So I don't think anybody should be worried about those so much, because I've had a lot of you guys asking me lately. So when we're looking at AVAX, I mean, here's the thing. So when we're looking at all of these altcoins, all they ended up doing on this big move was they finished a wave C, right? So even though this thing's still correcting down in here, this big wick is most likely the lowest that it goes, because sometimes what you're going to see is you'll have this big wick come in and it'll kind of pull back, but it'll hold a higher high and then it'll start reversing, because this move that we just recently made inside of AVAX, and this is going to be the case on a lot of different cryptos, more or less what you're looking at is a wave 1, a wave 3, and a 5. So you have your first little subwave impulse. This is an A, this is wave B, and what we finished down here was wave C. Now keep in mind that this wick did come all the way back down and mostly fully retrace this move, but the candle body closed all the way up here, and so it's still a higher high. Even with us correcting back down in here, as long as we don't make a complete lower low from basically the beginning back down here at like $20.50, then you're looking at this thing holding support and starting that next impulse. All it is an expanded wave C, right? We just had a much deeper correction inside of this wave C. But I mean, realistically, it's not much different than even this bigger move that we just started, to begin this cycle. It's all relatively the same. 5-wave rise. The ABC was relatively similar, although this one was obviously more volatile. A, B, and C. But this one came all the way back down, pretty much fully retraced that move. It's not all that different from what we're seeing today. It's just in the earlier portion of these cycles, sometimes you're going to see these volatile type of capitulations. And, even though the impulse is still holding support, it's not breaking Elliott wave structure or anything. It's just kind of throwing up a more volatile version of the same pattern, which, guys, with crypto, we know that they create very volatile Elliott wave structure. And that was kind of my first introduction into truly understanding crypto trading. There was this guy named Crypto Picasso, and I don't even think he's around, to be honest. I don't see him anymore on, Twitter or anything. I think he just sticks to his private group. But he was this guy that was back in the early Bitcoin days, and he was one of the only people that was really heavily trading and, kind of charting on YouTube. And my friend Dallin paid half a Bitcoin for his trading course. And me and him just sat there and studied the whole thing. And one of the things that he taught was like market cycles and Elliott waves, and how you can look at prior market cycles and see the beginning of new Elliott waves before a much bigger market cycle starts. So it was his introduction to teaching me about how to identify the market cycles, how to identify basic Elliott waves and get into them. But one of the things that he often talked about was the fact that when you're looking at Elliott waves in crypto, they're going to be a lot more volatile than traditional, normal Elliott waves in the stock market or Forex and things like that, because the markets don't move in the same ways. So with crypto, you have to be aware of that. And I think that that's a perfect example when we're looking at AVAX and we're seeing just how big that wave C decline was, almost retracing the entirety of that impulse. That's very much the type of stuff that you're going to see inside of crypto. So you either have to be willing to stomach it, or, I guess you have to learn how to trade it. One of the two. It's not like anybody can learn how to trade these markets. It just takes a little bit of practice, because once you learn to identify different setups and you see how cryptos perform, you might have a certain idea of how to go into a trade. But then when you start trading the markets, you might see that crypto behaves a little bit differently. So you have to tweak your trading plan a little bit different. And all of that just ultimately comes down to practice and experience. So if you are willing to, stick into that, then you can kind of hold this. But when we're looking at AVAX, at the end of the day, I still look at this as just holding its impulse. I don't think that it's broken any of its bullish structure. It really just looks like we're kind of creating that consolidation before the next major higher high into price discovery takes place. At the end of the day, guys, a lot of altcoins are still holding their price structure. They're still holding bullish support. There were certain altcoins that sunk lower, but the ones that sunk lower are the ones that are predominantly tied to Ethereum, because Ethereum has been underperforming so much. So layer twos and things like that, anything that was kind of building off of the Ethereum network, those got hit really hard. And that's why we're kind of waiting. Once again, the thing I've been talking a lot about, we don't see alt season until Ethereum starts to reverse and starts to outperform Bitcoin. But once that takes place, that's where all of these altcoins are going to really catch up in a big way. And I really think that because ETH has lagged up to this point so much, the ones that will bounce extremely hard out of the lows will actually be ones, related to the Ethereum chain, whether they're improving on it, whether they're just simply building on it, one of those two things. Ink is moving. I know. I was just looking up the chart. They just barely had like the halving, so to speak, except it's like much bigger than a normal halving. I think it's like 10x the normal rate of a halving. So that's really exciting. PulseX is bouncing super hard, all of those. You still in PEAI? Yeah, I'm in PEAI, but I did sell like 80% of my position at almost the top. So when the news first came out that Richard Hart, it wasn't Richard Hart's wallet that was like voting on the MakerDAO stuff, I went and instantly sold all of my my 80% of, I still hold a decent amount, but I sold almost all of my position, just because at that point I figured that even if the narrative somehow became true, I figured that was almost like the needle popping the bubble of the hype. So I didn't really want to hold into it. I was already up like 10x plus, and I just wanted to be able to get out, because I already had a huge position inside of it, because I had kind of started with a bigger position than I would normally take. So it paid off and I got out. I'm still holding a good chunk, but I'm honestly looking at the new PEAI that just released over on Pump Tires. That's the one that I would personally be looking to buy. And I'm thinking about rotating all of my current PEAI that I have left, but maybe like a small portion, keep like, little tiny chunk left, 1 to 5%, keep that other 15% and throw it into the new PEAI, because I honestly think that the upside's a lot higher. And it actually is related to Richard Hart's wallet. So, I mean, the narrative is better in my opinion. Jay Freak, what's up, my brother? It's good to see you in the chat. What would make you worried? To be honest, what would make me worried is if we just kept dragging out, if the market made a much deeper, lower low and we drug out, we're sitting here in March, April, and the altcoins still haven't moved. At that point, that would be very concerning, considering altcoins have always ran in the final year of the bull market. And right now, we're currently sitting in February, getting closer to like mid-February. I think that we're really close to getting that big move, but we're kind of at that point where it's like, oh my gosh, like it hasn't happened yet. Is it going to actually happen? I think it's going to, but at the end of the day, we can only wait and see until we get there. But that would be something that I think would be concerning. But like I said, guys, we're already seeing a lot of the institutions applying for these ETFs with altcoins. Dogecoin was just the most recent one to have like 5 or 6 different institutions apply for that one. So the institutional money will be here for the altcoins. That I am positive of. We haven't seen the retail FOMO yet. And to be quite honest, the retail FOMO is just going to be incited the second that, we start seeing any of this money start to rotate on chain. If we start seeing NFTs start taking off, if we see more of the meme coins, but like Dogecoin running into a new all-time high, that was really what kicked off a lot of the hype in the last cycle, was seeing Dogecoin, because that was where all of the retail was like, oh my gosh, Dogecoin is running so hard. Elon Musk just talked about it. He's buying Bitcoin. I'm going to go over to Robinhood and buy some, right? So that's the type of stuff. So all of these different companies that are getting the ETFs, the XRPs, the, Dogecoins, the Ethereums, the Solanas, all of the top major cryptos that have got these filings for them, they're going to immediately benefit because they're going to get the listings on the Robinhoods. They're going to get the listings on all of the major exchanges whenever, TradeFi ultimately adopts the technology to be able to, for normal people to invest into those ETFs. They're going to end up running too. And it's going to be, kind of more shared around. But we're just kind of at that, I guess you could say, the precipice before we're finally getting that rotation to take place. So this capitulation that we're in right now is almost the same exact thing that happened in the last bull market, which I'm going to just run over to the chart real quick and kind of elaborate on what I'm talking about. So when Bitcoin ran into a new all-time high in the last cycle, altcoins were capitulating the entire time, right? So we're looking at this. Remember, guys, altcoins underperformed Bitcoin in this big drop, right? And then they were actually outperforming Bitcoin this entire way up. When Bitcoin was trying to figure out what I'm trying to say. When Bitcoin was running back up to its resistance level at $10,500, it was at that move. Altcoins were actually making some pretty big runs. And it was after Bitcoin kind of peaked here at the halving, because this was right where the halving took place in May. I think it was May 10th, to be exact. But it was right at that point that the altcoins finally started to taper off. Bitcoin went through this small little correction, and altcoins were making big drops. They were selling off significantly. And then Bitcoin, remove some of these, Bitcoin broke out and made this higher high right here, and altcoins made a lower low. A lot of them didn't do literally anything. They were just kind of staying in their same low points. And Bitcoin had broken out, right? Because this was that major $10,000 level approximately, right? Every time we hit it, we rejected, hit it, rejected, hit it, rejected, every time. And then when we broke back above it and started holding it as support, everybody knew that that was the reversal point, because it was also the breakout of this long-term triangle, right? When we were looking at Bitcoin consolidating inside of this long-term triangle, it was also breaking out of that at the same time. So we knew that this thing was about to produce a big breakout. And Bitcoin rallied from $10,500 all the way up here to $42,000. And the altcoins made lower lows and they didn't do anything. So that was the same capitulation that we're seeing today, where Bitcoin made that massive move. Oh my gosh, Bitcoin, was worth all the way up here. We're seeing Bitcoin sitting into price discovery, dwarfing the prior all-time high. And then we pull up, our altcoin charts, like Solana or something. I'll pull up a number of them so you guys can get a little bit of a perspective. Solana at this exact same point. So Bitcoin reversed right here and started running. And that was basically right at this point where Solana started to run as well. So we're talking Solana still being all the way below its prior all-time high when Bitcoin was sitting all the way up here at about $42,000. So a lot of these altcoins were still at very low points and they were lagging Bitcoin, underperforming it. And many people were assuming that altcoins were just going to continue to underperform it and lag it the entire time. You can look at a number of different altcoin charts, like Phantom is another good example, an altcoin that ran extremely hard that I profited on in the last cycle. Did a lot of the same type of things, where when you're talking about that first higher high, Bitcoin was right here, started to reverse. It's reversing, and Phantom is just kind of just consolidating here at this bottom, right? It was right here. Phantom barely started to move once Bitcoin kind of got into resistance and got into that pullback. That was finally the point where Phantom started to move. So the thing is there was a lot of altcoins that underperformed as Bitcoin made that first big breakout. When we're looking at Bitcoin today, already having that big breakout into new all-time highs, and Bitcoin has already had this little correction in here, but altcoins have fallen lower. Bitcoin is holding, great value into price discovery, and as Bitcoin has made these small corrections, altcoins have drug, extremely low into their cycles. So throughout that time, we're seeing a mini capitulation take place, in the similar way that it was taking place over in here. As Bitcoin was breaking out, making their big runs, altcoins were still lagging and way below their cycle lows, way below their prior highs that they were at. And it wasn't until Bitcoin finally started to, make that next big breakout that the altcoins really ran in a big way, right? Bitcoin peaked here, and when Bitcoin started to correct, altcoins did run. So that's a little different than what we're seeing right here. Bitcoin's been correcting and altcoins have made lower lows. So that's a little bit of a difference. But it wasn't really until Bitcoin went from like 30K at the bottom of this correction and started running to 65K this is where all of the altcoin outperformance took place. It was really at that final move as Bitcoin went into price discovery. So if we're looking at where we're at today, assuming this correction is going to end fairly soon, and we're talking our next big breakout, maybe we run up to $150,000. And that's relatively the same type of thing where we get that next major liftoff in many of these different markets. Because if we're looking at some of these markets, Solana's already sitting clear up at their prior all-time highs, right? But the majority of the other markets out there, are still fairly low. If we pull up like the crypto total market cap, this can give us a little bit more of a better idea. Actually, let's pull up the others. This will give us a better idea of what. Oh, wrong chart. Total 3. So if we're looking at the total 3, I mean, realistically, there's nothing even slightly bearish about this setup, in my opinion. All we've done is the same exact pattern that we've been following the entire time. We make this correction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, right back onto prior resistance is new support, and then it bounces. Then we make another big run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, right? Mouse is getting jacked up. A, B, C, retested perfectly on the prior highs, new support, and bounce. I mean, the total market cap, and this is excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum, so this is all of the other altcoins in the market. This thing is holding up better than ETH. It's ETH that's dragging the market lower currently. So, I mean, realistically, this thing is setting up for that first big breakout into price discovery. There is nothing in the charts that is bearish. So anybody that's really freaked out right now that's upset makes sense because the markets are dragging lower as Bitcoin's into price discovery. But you guys got to be aware that the same thing happened in the last cycle and continues to happen. It's not like everything's just going to be so black and white where Bitcoin's just going to start running and altcoins are going to run even harder. It's always in the tail end of the cycles that the altcoins actually start to run. And I think that with this chart kind of showing us that we're still below those prior all-time highs, we haven't got all of that new liftoff yet. When this thing makes that new all-time high and finally enters price discovery, that's where the retail FOMO comes in. That's where the everything cycle sets in. You can't call it the everything cycle until you look at the total market cap of the everything chart, right? Because that's this excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. So it really is all other altcoins in the market. If this thing finally enters price discovery, I think that that's kind of the go-ahead that, hey, this is true alt season. But, we're obviously looking at Bitcoin dominance as well because that has to be going down. But I don't believe that Bitcoin dominance is going to be going down until this chart is into new all-time highs because all of the other prior cycles, that's been the way that it's consolidated. So really, guys, nothing is that different. This is still universally a similar setup that we've seen in prior cycles. And, all we've done is maintain higher highs and higher lows. That market cycle right there of the crypto total market cap, that's a really great looking setup. It looks a lot like Bitcoin. If we go back to Bitcoin, let's remove these drawing tools. Let's go to Bitcoin back in 2015 and stuff. So this is when I got into Bitcoin. And if we're looking at kind of the way that this is consolidating, in my opinion, it's roughly the same. Bitcoin made perfect higher highs and higher lows in this 2016 uptrend. All it did every single time, we had a resistance level, we'd break out of it, we'd correct back down, retest that level, go back up. When we'd break out of this next resistance level here, we'd rally up, we'd ABC correct, right back down onto the prior high as new support and bounce. Do the same thing, hit another resistance up here, ABC correction, back down onto the prior high as new support, make another new high. Same thing. So Bitcoin in 2017, 16 and 17, it kind of followed this exact type of a setup where you're just following very consistent market structure, higher highs and higher lows off of support and resistance. Everything that you want to see for a bull market is currently happening in the total market cap for altcoins. So, to be too freaked out right now, in my opinion, is just a little bit dramatic because it just, all we can do is look back at the last cycle, see how we were in this current setup. And even though altcoins ran in January, I believe is when they finally started to move in the last bull market, the timeframes really aren't that far off. If we start running February to maybe the beginning of March, we'll probably have that midway correction. June, July would be my guess. Everything gets washed out, and then we kind of run into one more final move to wrap up the end of 2025. Where the altcoins start to run in this next move into price discovery, once they outperform Bitcoin dominance tops, when we finally see that start to take place, we have to keep a mental note and just be aware that, hey, the altcoins are finally finally starting to run. This is the month and this is the day of the month in which they are beginning this run. In years past, if we look at where that same shift took place, we can get an idea of where that midway correction took place. And, just to be 1000% on what I'm talking about here, if we're looking at the altcoins in the last cycle, it was kind of right here, January. It was at the very beginning of January and February that we finally started to see like a lot of extreme price action, right? And it started to run at the first week of February really hard. And we went to our midway correction in May, right? So January to May. And then if we're looking at 2017, it was a little bit different. In 2017, altcoins peaked in June. So it was the month after. But altcoins started to run in March, right? So it was a little bit later into the year that the altcoins finally started to run. So we're talking Bitcoin still below its prior all-time highs, and the altcoins were as well. But it was the very end of March like 27th, that Bitcoin started to run, and altcoins actually outperformed Bitcoin on that first breakout. So when we're talking about similarities here, we're pretty much actually at the same time frames that we were if we're talking of 2017 for the altcoins, because this cycle took a lot longer for the altcoins to finally start to run, right? Because Bitcoin was like 1,250 days below that prior all-time high before it started to break out. All of our cycles after the 2017 cycle have broken out much quicker. In the last cycle was 1,100 days. This one was also 1,100 days. So, 150 days quicker for the Bitcoin chart to finally start to break out. When we're talking about what the altcoins did, they started to run in March and then they peaked in June. So, if we're looking at our current setup, we're getting closer and closer to mid-February. Maybe this drags out till the end of February and we're talking March. We could be looking at a relatively similar topping point for the altcoins for that midway correction, right? If we're looking at altcoins finally starting to run in March around that same time frame as what we saw in 2017, my guess is it's June or July that we see the midway correction for the altcoins, right? And most likely what that would look like is kind of what I just drew right here. But I think that they would go a little bit higher, right? They could probably run all the way up here like this. And then they see that midway correction like that, have that big drop. Bitcoin makes that correction, hoses out the altcoins, and then they kind of go for one more final move like this. This is what I would be expecting for the altcoins, considering this is a lot of the same similarities we've seen in the prior cycles. I think that the only way that we can identify when this midway correction takes place is going to kind of revolve around when the altcoins finally reverse, right? In the same ways that it did over in here, in the same ways that it did over in here, because the altcoins started to reverse in January of our last cycle. And in 2017, they waited until the end of March, right, before they started to go. So all of that, in my opinion, lines up with what we have to see today. We're just going to have to pay attention exactly, when that shift takes place inside of the market. So I've been rambling for a bit. Were people saying no more alt season in this time in the last cycle? Yeah, 1,000%. Everybody was saying that. Do you see more of a drawdown on ETH? I do not see more of a drawdown. I mean, in the short term, we could pull down just a little bit, but big picture, I think that was the correction. I mean, it retested the trend line. That was the thing that, if we break down again lower from that, I mean, ETH probably just fails, which I really don't think is going to be the case. All of the tariffs are nothing more than posturing. I agree. Telcoin got approved for bank. V4 came out for app gaming partnership. That's what's up. I hold some Telcoin. Midas hasn't been this low in years. It's either the best opportunity I've seen or a complete garbage. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. When these altcoins bleed and they haven't done anything for 3 years besides just go lower, that's the problem that you have inside of your mind is, oh my gosh, did I just spend all of this time investing into garbage, or is this finally going to end up moving? And, for me personally, I've made Midas my biggest position in crypto. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm either an idiot who's going to lose all of my money, or when ETH rotates, I think Midas is going to run extremely hard. So, that's why I've made it my biggest position at this point, is because I really do think it will. It's just having the backing of Ethereum has been a really negative thing this cycle, because ETH is just drugged so low, and Solana outperformed it because of all of the pump.fun stuff. So it's just that ETH is lagged, that layer twos have gotten smashed really hard. But I really do believe that layer 2s are a narrative in the same ways I made so much money on layer 1s in all of the prior cycles. I'm looking at layer 2s kind of being that next thing for me where I'm like, I got that same feeling on how I made all that money off the layer 1s last cycle. I'm thinking I can do the same thing with layer 2s. And Midas is that one where I'm like, out of all of them in the market, that's the one that I have the most confidence in long term. PulseChain season just started. Ink inflation cut from 1 to 0.1 per minute. Yeah, man, I agree. I'm excited for Ink. It looks really solid right now. See it 22 cents now. Hammered. Yep. C's hammered. Ethgate screwed Ethereum. Honestly, ETH has just kind of been screwed from the beginning because it never really worked. It has always just been kind of a piece of crap. But the issue is we're all backed to it in liquidity. So the more we're bonded to ETH, the more that everything's going to drag lower, right? XRP. XRP's looking fire right now. We can go take a little peek. XRP bounced one of the hardest in the entire market on this recent move. So if you go to the daily, all this entire move was an expanded flat ABC correction, right? So this is going to be the most volatile type of ABC correction in Elliott waves because it destroys everybody, right? So you have the low of the range, you have the high of the range, and inside of wave B, it actually breaks out above the top of the impulse because this is basically like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So the top of wave 5 is right here. So inside of wave B, it actually makes another high. It looks like an impulse. It looks like, oh, this is actually wave 5, and it's going to go much higher, except this is actually the top of wave B. And then wave C comes in here and it comes all the way back down and actually breaks below the range of wave A. So anybody that had shorts got stopped out and liquidated here, and anybody that had longs got stopped out and liquidated here. So it's kind of a destruction of everything type of pattern. And that's what XRP did. So I'm looking at XRP's correction as being over, right? It's making this little higher high right now. So whether it takes a couple days to figure out or a week, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm looking at XRP maintaining higher highs from here. All we've done is break out above this prior high of our last cycle. We're currently just consolidating on top of that level as new support. Once this reversal sets in, you're talking price discovery, breaking back out of a prior all-time high from, 2,000 days ago, approximately 2018. There's a lot of outperformance in XRP, and I have a lot of confidence that the XRP ledger itself is really primed for a lot of upside. There's going to be an entire new ecosystem for you to be able to trade on XRP, and that's what gives me a lot of confidence in XRP long term, to maintain its value, is because not only does it have more of a backing with governments, institutions, banks, all these key partnerships, but now with having an EVM-based ledger for people to be able to create smart contracts, be able to create tokens and things, it ultimately is going to increase the liquidity of XRP. The more tokens that are created in the ecosystem, the more liquidity that's bonded to XRP. If any of those tokens do well, the price of XRP does well as a whole. So, you want to see that type of opportunity for your top cryptos. Any type of layer one that has new tokens that can be added to the ecosystem, it gives a perfect opportunity for just tons of liquidity to come into your coin. And the more liquidity that comes into your coin, the higher that the coin price is going to rise. So not always, more liquidity ultimately means that it's less volatile at the same time. But if you're talking a layer one that has to take billions and billions of dollars to be able to push the price, at the end of the day, that it's got to have that liquidity, and layer ones are the most primed candidates to get a lot of that liquidity. Retail FOMO will happen after BlackRock XRP ETF. Yeah, I agree. ETFs will signal a lot of FOMO because that'll give the opportunity for retail to be able to invest into these things. TitanX. Agreed. TitanX looks fire. Let's go look at the chart real quick. Yep. It's reversing. I'm telling you, this is one that I really think is going to set up for a great big pump. I think that this thing could catch a lot of people by surprise. And if we go to the prior all-time high from where we're at, 176x. So that'd be awesome. I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine it doing something like that. And, you know, we see it happen all the time. And you got to keep in mind that Titanx is like super deflationary. So if you're talking about tokens that can see the supply shock and the price really start to go up quick, Titanx is a prime example of one of those type of cryptos, which is why I've been talking about it lately, why I've been talking about why I think you should buy it, more importantly, and why I've actually been looking to add it into my portfolio as well. So when I first covered it, it was like 32 million in market cap. It's at 42 million right now, but market cap's obsolete. Token supply, liquidity, those things are ultimately what dictate, the way price moves. And this thing is going to have a lot of their token supplies locked up, being burned from various project launches. And so when you're talking about a rush of new people trying to buy into a token because they see it doing good and they need the token to be able to get into these new launches and stuff, yet all of the other tokens that are, launching are burning that native token. So it's really hard to get it on the open market. The price literally just goes vertical. So it will surprise you guys how high some of the valuations of these coins can get in market cap. But like I stated, market cap is kind of a flawed metric. It doesn't really mean a heck of a lot. It's kind of just a way to value things on an index form. It aside from that, it doesn't really mean that much. Did you know last run and this run we both had exactly 35% pullbacks on total alts except BTC and ETH? I did not know that, but that's interesting. It makes sense. In February. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that. My data showing alt season started today. I mean, that's the thing, dude, is like if we're talking like in hindsight, like if we could fast forward to the end of 2025 and we're going to be talking about, when was that shifting point for the alt season? Like we're probably right there. Like we're historically, if we're looking at the charts, this is the point in which the altcoins have started to run, whether it was January, whether it was March, we're right there, right? We're February. So we're smack dab in between both of them. So it like, I really do believe that alt season is pretty much here, right? Like if we're going to see that rotation take place in the altcoins, it's always taken place like right around this shifting point at the end of the year, whether it was right at the beginning of the year or whether it was in the springtime, the earlier portion of the following year. It all followed that same thing. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. The chart might look like, the Bitcoin dominance is going to be at the peak at the very bottom of the altcoin reversal, right? So if we're looking at Bitcoin dominance being at roughly a peak point, you have to call the top at some point. And so like historically where we've seen that top is right where we're at. So, I mean, I'm kind of right there with you. If it's going to rotate, it's going to happen pretty much now. Thank God Joe Biden is not in the White House anymore. What a retard he was. Yeah, amen, man. I'm very much thankful for that. Do you expect ETFs now and ISO 2022 or 20022 deployment March drive the markets or news directly related to large institutions? I mean, it's a narrative that will drive value for sure. There will be a number of narratives that drive value, but that's going to be one of them. In prior cycles, we'll even just take this cycle. Memes has been a narrative that's driven value. AI has been a narrative that's driven value. And as we're talking about what is going to drive value further into this following year, 2025 to be exact, I think that, that has a very key opportunity of being one of those because it's so deeply tied with the way that we're going to be progressing as like a universal government, I guess you could say. Because for me personally, I believe crypto will, bring kind of like a one world system and a one world government. It might take a long time and it might not be in my lifetime that we see the one world government aspect, but I really wouldn't be surprised just because of the route that we're at. It just makes the most sense to me considering that's kind of what we've always moved towards. So I think that eventually we're going to see a lot of cryptos that are going to be used on a global scale to really create this sort of one world system that we're going to be able to use. And, you know, the cryptos that are ultimately a part of that, you know, they're more primed to see that adoption than other cryptos. So, you know, I do believe that that is a key narrative to be watching for. Anyone remember all those tokens last cycle at this time were low, and by March we're all 100x, 1000x? Yeah, exactly, man. Like the majority of the everything cycle, like that, there was altcoins that pulled 1000x in the final 3 months of the bull market. If you looked at gaming tokens, let's just go pull up some of those charts. Like Illuvium, that was a good example of one. If you look at Illuvium, GameFi was a huge narrative that blew up in the last bull market. See, it could be worse for Metis. We could be at a new all-time low. So Illuvium had this first little cycle, and it was July. It's like the end. It was July of 2021 that it finally started to run. So the very end of June, it went up like 60x. But, you know, I don't think this is showing the whole chart because there was also like private rounds of fundraising. So if you would have got into any of those like C2Fi funds and stuff on the launch pads, then you could have made well over 1000x, because I know people that did on that one. So, you know, we're talking about a ton of money in some of these that are just going to pump in the final tail end. We've already seen that up to this point. You know, how quick Trump token pumped, how quick Melania token pumped. Any of these tokens, like it just takes one rotation, one big person to talk about it, and the freaking thing is just going to go through the roof. So we're going to see the majority of the big gainers really just taking place in the final 6 months of the bull market, because it always kind of has been that way. So like, don't feel like you're missing out, because there's going to be so many new opportunities throughout that, you know, we really are primed in a big way. I don't think ETH will keep the number 2 forever, but I don't think it's going anywhere either. That's kind of the issue right now with ETH. I mean, if it learns to scale, but yeah, I mean, we think about how much technology is transitioned over the years, right? It's not like the first one was always the best. I think Bitcoin is the only one that you can say for sure had the first mover's advantage, and because of that is going to be the one that won't go anywhere. If Bitcoin fails, crypto fails in my eyes. So Bitcoin's the only one that I view untouchable. Outside of Bitcoin, I think that all of the other ones are, you know, could easily just go to zero. And when we're talking about ETH, it's the only reason ETH is still here and we have to use it is because it's liquidity. Everything is liquidity bonded to it. Everything built off of Ethereum. Everything uses Ethereum. They use the smart contracts, the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine, all of that stuff. You've got a small amount of other cryptos that don't. But ultimately, the ones that don't still utilize EVM because that's where all of the liquidity is. So they still need it. That's the big issue with ETH. It's the liquidity of all of the market. Outside of Bitcoin, all of the cryptos are built on Ethereum. They use Ethereum smart contracts. They use Ethereum to some extent, and they need Ethereum. So, you know, like I agree with you. It definitely won't be in this cycle that it'll fail. There will have to be some institutionalized crypto that they can plug into that they can streamline to get true adoption quickly, that would just replace Ethereum, that would, you know, be that thing. But maybe Ethereum never gets replaced. Maybe it scales finally. I don't know. But, you know, I've bet a lot on like layer 2s and stuff. So we need Ethereum to start running if I'm going to see any profit in some of those things. So I believe in Ethereum enough to at least invest into this stuff for this cycle. Bitcoin dominance. Let's go take a peek. Oh, wrong chart. Indexes, dominance. Share this tab. Alrighty, so if we're looking at dominance, what we were wanting to see was a rejection from this level here, right? Because we had this big, oh, I'm on a 3-day, hold on, weekly. What we wanted to see was this to close below resistance, right? And it's actually closing a little bit above, but we have 2.5 days left until it closes. So if altcoins bounce and Bitcoin bounces, yet altcoins outperform it on the way up, and this does close bearish, that would be the ideal scenario. That's what we want to see. If it closes at this level, it's a toss-up. It's 50-50 in my eyes what the heck happens, because I don't know. I really won't know what to expect at that point. Pretty much right where we're at right now, I will give that almost a 50-50. Closing outside of this technically is a breakout though. So, if it does close outside of this, I'm going to lean more towards I would say I don't know, 60 to 70% chance that it breaks out. It's kind of hard to say. It's just my opinion at the end of the day. But I want to see this thing close back below resistance, because if that's the case, this thing would look like we could be at some type of rejection candle. But we're going to have to just watch with the market. In the last cycle, we had this final fake out that took place that actually broke all the way back above and cleared our range high. So similar type of price action that we're seeing today, even if it went up for one more move, did something like that, don't be surprised if this thing does end up just pulling this big bull trap, whether it's here, whether it's one more high. I don't for sure know. And, really nobody does, but I think it will end up rotating. I know I've said it forever, but that's still what I believe. PTGC has achieved a 300 million market cap on chain, where the Pulse token is still below SAC price. There are only 1.4% of coins left in LPs for purchase. Possible supply shock inbound. Let's just pull up the chart of PTGC because it's such an amazing chart. I wouldn't advise people to buy it anymore, even though, it's hard to even say not to buy it. But we don't have a reference point anymore, and I always have a hard time buying into stuff like this. But here's the thing. Altcoins that are going to keep outperforming, they're going to keep outperforming. So even though it's at 258 million in market cap, this is one of those tokens that doesn't have much of a supply. So the supply shock can get really overextended, and the valuations in market cap can get blown out of crazy proportions. It's just something that happens. But this entire last move, this right here looks kind of like this was a wave one, a wave two correction. 1, 2. It kind of looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. So it could extend up here a little bit higher still before our true cycle top, or short-term top, I should say. But what I'm looking at this being is wave 1, wave 3 somewhere. Whether it's another high from here, I don't know. I'm not trying to pick the top on it because that's just silly. But let's just, for the sake of the analysis, assume that the top is right here. Wave 3, we would probably see a wave 4 correction back down that could come, it could come back down even inside of this little correction that we just went through. But big picture, we still have a wave 5 to go after that, right? So it would just be a little A, B, C correction, similar here, similar all throughout these portions. But then it would just be starting that next big impulse here, and you'd probably be talking, a couple billion, maybe more than that in market cap. So this thing's going to keep running, and I don't have any doubts of that. I should have bought a ton of it all the way back down in here. I covered it a lot on my live streams, but oh my gosh, I wasn't even sharing the chart. I always do that. Hold on. Here's the chart. I hate when I do that. Oh my gosh. It's so annoying. All right. So PTGC, wave 1, this is wave 3. We could make one more high before the top is, but for the sake of this, let's just assume the top of wave 3 is here. We could correct back down to this prior correction, but this thing still has a whole nother wave 5 impulse to come after that. So you're talking multiple billions that this thing will be running in. It'll be like a wave 1 here, wave 3, wave 4, and then wave 5. So you're talking this thing still having a lot of upside potential, and with the supply shocks, that's what really drives price and what dictates price. So this is one that I think is going to keep doing well. I'm not really looking to buy it anymore, and I feel like I've just missed the boat. But I told everybody to buy UFO, and that thing's up like 30x from where I told everybody. So, there's going to be new tokens in the PTGC ecosystem, and it's a great opportunity to watch for those because they've done really well up to this point. I just spilled on myself. Thoughts on big Richard Hart move with Ink token and ecosystem? I believe so. It looks good. We can go look at it real quick. Let's start with Pulse. Take a peek at what this looks like. Realistically, it's just holding its level. I don't think it's going to break down. It looks like it's just kind of capitulating off of this support level. I do find it likely it holds this support, and this thing's going to start reversing back up. And we'll finally start to see this thing break out because, you know, it looks a lot like Bitcoin in the last cycle to me when we were just consolidating inside of that big triangle. It's just kind of it's obviously a more unique version of that, but it's the same type of thing. It's just a big triangle consolidation. And I think the next high is where we finally break outside of this. So that's PulseChain. PulseX looks better. It's holding the level that I was watching for, although we've taken a little bit longer of consolidation here off this level. You know, at the end of the day, we're still holding this higher high. So when I made my last update, I talked about how we had held this main trend line right down here, but then we started to work on a steeper trend line. So either I see one of two things. Either this is a descending triangle or kind of like I don't know, like a symmetrical triangle. I don't know what you'd call it, a bearish pennant, I guess. I'm not like a chart pattern person, but either this is a bearish pattern before we come back down and retest this trend line again, like here, and reverse like that, or it's going to reverse right here and it'll do something like that. I lean towards the reversal taking place out of this triangle and holding support, but you know, it could make a lower low. Anything's possible. We just have to pay attention to it. But I would lean towards the bullish potential playing out. Inc is, you know, holding support. Nothing's really changed here. We're holding our first higher high because this was resistance, made our first impulse. This is us flipping that resistance here as new support. Support, 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 right? There's nothing telling me that this is going to be breaking down and going bearish. We can come over and look at Hex. Hex is just right there at that downtrending resistance. It's working on a breakout or a breakdown. If Hex breaks down, I think that it's likely Inc and PulseX breakdown as well. But to be honest, with Hex just kind of holding this trend line, even though it's technically below resistance, this type of stitching price action is oftentimes what you can see before that breakout is going to follow through. So we do have a big setup playing out. I do think that if Hex starts to run and makes a new height, then PulseX is going to follow and break out of its resistance along with Pulse and, you know, kind of all of the above. So that's what I'm watching for there. Have a look at Memdex 100, please. A Murad coin. Memdex. I wouldn't buy it. It looks like it can still go a lot higher, but these type of things, you don't have a reference point, right? I don't know anything about the project either, so I can't really comment on it. I'm only joining you now, bro. Going back to the start of the stream. Catch you later. I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Thanks for joining the stream, though. Man, I'm tired of my portfolio gone from 6K to 2K now. Yeah, man, it's part of the process, unfortunately. It really is. But, you know, if you're talking about what that 2K will be a year from now, I'm thinking you're going to be real happy if you just stick to what you're doing. It's always crappy until it's not. And then all of a sudden you realize just how insane it could be. The amount of times that if I would have just held my $2,000 initial investment into stuff that it turned into $1 million, it's a lot of times. Like, it's actually more than one hand, more than 5 times, right? So in my opinion, that's a lot of times for me. The fact that I could have had generational wealth 5 different times and fumbled the bag. But the issue with it is it's really, really hard to put $2,000 into something and hold it until it turns into $1 million, right? So, you know, if you can't stomach a 6K dip to 2K, then you're guaranteed not to be able to hold to $1 million either. So it's all universal, right? So you just kind of have to deal with it. It's all an emotions game, and crypto's a tricky game to be able to play. I've been doing it for almost a decade, still constantly trying to learn how to be better at it. Thank you for being positive and throwing facts, not feelings. Dang, on X, you would think the world is ending when it's normal for crypto. We're wrecked now, but it was just temporary. Yeah, I agree, man. Or Cindy, not man, but you get the point. I agree, ma'am. Yeah, honestly, everybody's freaking out. And during times like this, I choose to stay away from Twitter or X. It's just unfortunate because so many people are going to be glued to X. And that's the worst thing you can do is, you know, when everybody's got a different opinion about something and you don't know who to trust and who to believe. And this guy says this guy says that, and everybody's doom and gloom. it gets hard to just hold your stuff. So I purposely just stay away from social media. I feel like I have a confident understanding as far as what is about to take place. So with that understanding, I don't really need to overcomplicate anything. I don't need to be looking into things too deep. All I need to do is just stick to my plan and just kind of hold it through. So the more that we do that, the more that we ignore these things, it's just better off, because everybody's going to have a different opinion. And the only opinion I ever cared about was what the chart said. There can be some outliers, like, we had the COVID dip. We've had certain fundamental outliers and stimulus. But for the most part, if we're just following the 4-year cycles, we don't really need to get into too much details with all of the short-term crap. Because if we do that, we might overcomplicate our own plan. And if we, overcomplicate things for ourselves, oftentimes we end up capitulating early. We end up taking profits too early. We're unable to really just hold the fullness of the cycle. And it's really unfortunate, just because that's most people in the market. We're all emotional. None of us are not. I'm emotional. But once you've been around the cycles enough times and you've kind of had the opportunity to play them and see how they play out, it makes it a lot easier in someone like my situation just to chill and just sit and wait. I know a lot of people just want their profit now, and they feel really bent out of shape when the market goes down and they lose their portfolio, starts going down 30, 50, 60+%. It's just part of the game, man. It really is. Crypto is speculative gambling in a nutshell. So if you can't stomach the losses, you have to really learn how to just be like a dedicated trader, because that's the only other way to play the market. If you can't stomach big drops in the portfolio, the only other way is to learn how to effectively trade your entire portfolio, use risk management, set stop losses, and go the whole 9 yards. Otherwise, you just shouldn't be here. I prefer to just focus on the long term, because for me, if I just focus on the long term, I've done better. And if I just get my investments early, pick the coins I like, that I have the best, belief in, and hold them that whole year, I've always done better than anything else I could have done. So I look at that as being the best strategy for myself, while also maintaining the fact that it's also easier to do that, right? So not only is it like less time constrictive, but it's also very profitable either way. So, I mean, I like to stick to that. Look, we all hope he's right on 2025 alt season, but unfortunately, according to his analysis over the last months, that should already. But that's the thing, is it shouldn't have already happened, because in 2017, altcoins didn't run till March, and it's only February. So we're literally right perfectly smack dab with every prior cycle when the altcoin started to run. And the altcoin total market cap is right below prior all-time highs. So to be quite honest, like, there really isn't anything different than any of the prior cycles. And that's the issue. So many people are taking your stance where they're saying, oh my gosh, this is so different. Altcoins are in the toilet. We've never seen anything like this. How are altcoins capitulating as Bitcoin's at new all-time highs? But this is exactly the same things that have happened in the prior cycles. Altcoins in 2017 didn't run until the very end of March. It was 27th of March before alt season happened. So we still have a whole nother, like, basically 2 months to go before we can make the conclusion that we're wrong. And that's the issue, is, unless you're willing to hold until that time, it's going to look like it's the end of the world until it's not, right? So, when you're trading cycles and playing cycles, all we can do is pull what the prior cycles have done. And if we're looking at the prior cycles, we ran in January and then we ran in March. So where we're going to run right now, is it going to be this month? Is it going to be next month? I don't know. We have to wait and see. We still have 2 months to go before we can really draw the conclusion. So I don't know yet. Do you think that C is going to come back okay? Yeah, I do, for sure. What's up, Daily Me? Good to see you, my friend. Everything may be lagging, but the bigger picture is playing out exactly like 2017. Yeah, I agree. It really isn't anything different. This is my third cycle, and I'll never buy alts ever again, Bitcoin from here on. See, the issue is you made that choice right at the worst time before the rotation out of Bitcoin takes place, which is, what a lot of people do. They get into altcoins. Altcoins go down, they go down, they go down. Bitcoin's the only thing that goes up and outperforms. Then at the worst possible time, they get sick of holding their altcoins. They rotate them into Bitcoin, only for the altcoins to outperform Bitcoin. So they literally just count, like, they did the exact opposite of what they should have done. Just be aware of that, man. the end of the day, do your own thing. But if you see a big alt run throughout 2025, you're going to be a little bit upset with yourself. Yo, what up, digital asset guy? My friend Sam, it's good to see you. You're my hero. You helped me through my toughest times back in the bear markets of 2018 and 2019. What are your goals for this bull run? My goals for this bull run are to buy a ranch. I want to go to Alabama. I want a big old chicken ranch. I'm going to pick up some chickens and pens today. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a gigantic ranch. I'm going to do a lot of hog hunting. I want to train dogs for personal protection. So aside from chickens and dogs, using the dogs for personal protection, hog hunting for catch dogs, things like that. I'd like to do some traveling to Mexico, Philippines, do some traveling to a lot of like the historical sites across the world, go to a lot of the different museums. That's something I have always liked. Start a family, I guess, get married. The usual things, I guess, you would probably go and tackle if you had enough money to do the things that you wanted to do. That's my plan, man. Honestly, I just want to get out in the sticks somewhere where I don't have to be around other people. That's my goal. Not that I'm not already kind of out in the sticks away from people, but I have neighbors that I can like. My thesis and my philosophy on life has always been, if I can't walk outside and pee off of my front porch, then I'm too close to other people. Because that was just my life. I used to be able to just, run down to my mailbox in my underwear and be able to go get my mail and like be able to go and like take out the trash. I didn't have to worry about like somebody seeing me. That to me was nice, because everybody wants to occasionally be able to walk out front in their underwear. I can't be the only person, but a lot of people can't do that. So the more that I'm away from society, I can still do stuff on the internet and associate with people and all that stuff, but I'm much more focused on being able to, do things like farming. It's all I've ever really done. I grew up on a farm, so kind of looking to just do a lot of the same stuff. The issue is, what the F do you buy? Back in 2015, you bought BTC. Now there are millions of coins. Yeah, man, it is saturated. You got to do a lot of research. That's why I've always told you guys, stick with the layer ones and the layer twos and stuff. Any token that's an ecosystem for new tokens to build in. AI is obviously a smart opportunity this year. I think that there's a number of AI cryptos. If you spent enough time just looking on YouTube and looking at AI tokens, you would figure out who knows what ones are good and who's actually, talking about what they are, like good investments to look into, good companies, things that are really creating or what I should say, revolutionizing the AI space. There are certain outliers in those. You just have to be willing to put in a decent amount of research, right? Because yeah, I agree. Most stuff is crap. Illuvium on Pulse is my sleeper. If we ever saw parity, it's hundreds of X's from the price of ETH. The issue with the parity stuff on PulseChain is like, why would anybody want to pair anything? It would just inflate the supply of their native token. I don't see any value proposition on PulseChain to anybody to want to bring parity to their tokens, unless like MakerDAO is like the only one that I could see like actually wanting to, because they have so much free coins over there. But even then, I just don't really foresee why anybody would bring a parity to their tokens unless PulseChain becomes some like front runner and everything. They would just effectively be inflating the supply. Let's see. I'm going to skip up here, guys, because I'm freaking way behind on my stuff. Vibreville. I'm coming to Vibreville. I'm going to visit often. Yo, what up, Steven? It's good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good Friday afternoon. I think AI coins will outperform the most in alt season. Do you agree? I mean, the most, like, if you took them as an index and got every AI altcoin of all in the market and then compared them side by side, I don't know, to be honest, what outperforms. But I think AI is going to be top 3 for sure, without a doubt. Maybe even top 2. I mean, it could very easily be the one that outperforms everything. It's just the perfect combination of true adoption on like a global scale taking place right now, with, talking trillions of dollars worth of long-term wealth that's going to be put into this stuff. So I really do think that it has that opportunity where, a lot of it's going to be funny hype with AI agents and stuff that doesn't bring real value. but the opportunity and upside is going to be so big just playing off of the AI trend. So I'm right there with you. I really do think it could be the top performing one, but I'm going to go with top 3 for sure. You could pee anywhere if you're brave enough. Yeah, you could. Shout out to my girlfriend. It's good to see you watching my live stream. Hopefully you'll be with me. We'll go live in the sticks and we can pee off the porch together. That's true love. Brother, I've been watching your videos since 2019. Can't wait to share stories once this bull run is over. Yeah, man, I agree. I'd love to be able to do a meetup somewhere, be able to, I don't even know, learn about crypto or something, hang out for a weekend somewhere. I might do something like that. It'd be fun to be able to meet with all of you guys that actually watch the channel. I know a lot of you guys have been watching me for a lot of years, so it would be fun to connect. Will the streamer side of you retire after the bull run? Can't imagine D.I.Y retiring from videos and live streams. I mean, honestly, I think it really just depends on how much money I ended up with at the end of the bull market. I don't foresee myself ever just not making videos, because it would probably just turn into more of something for fun. Like when I really just thought that there was a great idea, go and make a video or go and live stream. It might even turn to just live streaming. I don't know. I like live streaming more than making videos. So honestly, I'll always live stream. I don't foresee a reason why I would stop making videos either. At the end of the day, I enjoy doing this. So it's not like I only do this just to make money. I have fun making the videos. So it's not like I ever foresee myself stopping, even if I had a lot of money. It's just that I just want to, part of the reason I love doing this so much is the fact that I still have full opportunities to do anything else in my day. I have a lot of time to be able to do other things. So it's not taking so much space out of my day and so much time for me to make these videos. I can still make the videos and I can still do the other things. If it ever became a thing where I was doing a lot of traveling, even then, I just don't foresee the reason, because I can record a video on my MacBook somewhere. So Tau, we can look at some Tau. I love BitTensor. We'll look at wrapped Tau. 2 years, 7 days. I don't know if this is the best chart to look at, but we're going to pull her up. I think it is. So, this one looks exactly the same as AVAX, the one we covered earlier. Subwave, wave 1, wave 3, wave 5. A, B, and C. So whether this comes back down like this before reversing, or whether we reverse back down in here somewhere, it doesn't matter. I do believe that this is a subwave impulse before it makes the next big breakout into price discovery. Considering, if you look at the last one, it's exactly what this was too. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5, right? So this is just a little a small version of this. To be exact, this is this, right? So this is what still has to come here. So, to put it simply, I guess, I'm looking at Tau going up massively. This is I think this is currently my biggest AI position, mainly because I just got into it early. It's not like I didn't know anything about it. I had a guy reach out to me, tell me it was going to be the future of AI and to buy it. And so I bought it. And then it really did become really big, or it really did become big. So it became my biggest investment in the AI space just for that one reason. And I'm just going to keep holding what I have. But I think it's still a good buy for anybody else that's looking to get into this. You can buy their native token. I don't know exactly where it's all at for you guys to be able to buy it. It was hard for me to buy it when I first did, which is why I actually bought the wrapped version on Ethereum. So you can buy the wrapped version, which is the chart we're looking at right here, or you can buy the native token, but you probably have to have their own specific wallet to be able to do that. So, just be aware of that. Thoughts on the thesis that ETH BTC can't bottom without quantitative easing? There's a very real potential of that for sure. If you look at the ETH chart, it probably hasn't gone up unless there has been quantitative easing. So I don't think the ETH is solely dependent on quantitative easing. Well, I don't know. because I think all of crypto is honestly kind of dependent on quantitative easing, because literally every time they start quantitative easing, the crypto markets explode. And that's kind of what's been a big driver of our prior cycles. So probably the reason why it's a driver value is because if the US dollar is the underlying liquidity layer of the entire market, and then they go and they pump trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars into the market, that's the same thing as just increasing the liquidity. And if you increase the liquidity, the prices rise. They don't have any other option at that point. So I honestly think all of crypto is pretty much reliant upon quantitative easing, because if you look at the chart of quantitative easing, when they've started and when they've stopped, it perfectly lines up to our bull markets and bear markets. So, I mean, it's a very real thing. Fart boy on deck screener. I'm assuming it's this one. It's probably not this one. Which chain is it on? It's probably this one, actually. It's on Solana. I would stay away from this. 130 million in market cap, and you're buying straight vertical. If you haven't bought it, I would not buy it. And if you bought it, oh man, these are the type of charts that I really have no idea. And this is kind of the issue when you're going to be talking about how hard it is to turn $2,000 into $1 million. It's because when they start doing this, you don't have a reference point. You don't know when to sell because it's literally just in price discovery. So, you know, I don't know. I really don't know. If I come out onto a log scale, it looks to me like wave 1 was probably down here somewhere. This is wave 3 and wave 4, or I don't know, man. These are tricky to identify. What I would be watching for would be bearish divergence. Which we do have some. We do have a lot of bearish divergence. That's a 4 hour. Let's go to a daily. So the daily has plenty of bearish divergence here. We're in new all-time highs, pumping super, super hard. Yet on the daily RSI, we're technically lower highs. So we also on the daily have declining volume, inclining price. Yeah, to be honest, I think the top's pretty much in on this. I think it's going to dump. Could go a little bit higher in here, but you're probably looking at this being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before it goes A, B, C, and fully goes all the way back down pretty much. So I think that that's a sketchy one. Further out in the sticks, we are now ranch, small lake, train guard dogs, have some chickens, a few cows, and a bull, and maybe a couple horse greenhouse. I don't want a Lambo. Same. That's the ultimate way to live life. Learn how to live off the land, learn how to garden, learn how to take care of animals, learn how to, do things without the help of other people. And then you don't need anybody else. You can just do all the stuff on your own accord. You'd be happier too. I'm personally happier living away from people in the sticks, but then just having some neighbors fairly close by or family or something. Really, the family is the only thing I care about. Watch you since last bull run. Are you still bullish on Tezos? To be honest, I'm not, because they haven't done anything. I have moved out of all of my Tezos and did a long time ago. I would advise everybody to do the same too. I like Metis. Turbo 100X. Or is that like a coin or something? I don't know what you're asking exactly. If they keep manipulating Ethereum, they will control the bull run and in the future. I mean, they already do. They already own most of the Bitcoin at this point. I don't foresee any situation in which they don't own everything. Money isn't an end game, it's a start point to more freedom. Amen to that. Just joining the stream. Thoughts on XRP shooting up? Yeah, I covered XRP at the beginning of the stream if you go back, and I did say that I think it's the correction's over and it's going to start going up. So yes, it will start shooting up. 2017 was volatile AF for BTC in January and March, and most of it before the final parabola. I could see this year being similar, like bull riding, pun intended. Yeah, it really is. It's almost the exact same type of setup. When do you think QE starts? I have no idea. Only the Fed knows that. I think China already started QE though, so at least that's bullish. Thoughts on Synapse right now? Same place it's been. It's literally in the same bottom formation. It hasn't changed once. Let's go to the same position as the others. It's coming back down to the lows though. Chances are it'll bounce off of them. Really reliant upon what Bitcoin does. If Bitcoin bounces, I think this does, but this kind of looks like a Wyckoff where you have the low, rejection, secondary low, and then it reverses off of the low like that. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards. So still holding my Synapse. Canada already started QE too. See, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but I also don't know how much impact Canada's QE has. I don't know how much impact China's QE has. I know America's impact on QE, what QE has, but I don't know about the other one. So it is going to be really interesting to see what it all means, because I've never actually looked into the other countries when they have done QE, what it has done with the chart, if it's lined up with when America does it or what. That's an interesting thought. But we're over an hour into this, so I do appreciate you guys tuning in. Have yourselves a great weekend. I will be back on Monday to drop a video for you guys. So thank you guys so much for the support. It really does mean the world. Thank you, 3 Diglets, for the donation. I also appreciate that. And with that being said, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Stay profitable out there. Don't be too freaked out by all of the volatility, because I promise you guys, we're right where we were in prior cycles. Everything's lining up for this year to be something special. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.